What is candle tunneling and what can we do as candle makers to prevent this from ever happening so we can make perfect candles every time? Let's dive in. Hello, my name is Kevin from Armatage Candle Company, the premier online resource for accelerating your candle making technique and business. In today's video, we're talking about tunneling. Tunneling is when you're burning that candle, but not all the wax on the outer ring is getting melted. And the cause is very simple. The wick is too small. But don't be confused by a candle that is tunneling and a candle that is cratering. Let's talk about tunneling, then we'll jump into cratering. So tunneling happens when the wick is too small. And when you're designing a candle, when you're the candle maker and you're trying to figure out what wick is the right size for this candle, and you're working through that standard test and it begins tunneling, you just need to wick up. You need to use a larger wick size or change your wick series and try something else. But how do you do this when you're like halfway through the candle? Well, option one, pour an entirely new candle. That is totally fine. You could just create the candle again with a different wick size, but now you're left with this other candle that didn't work out. It's got a wick in it that's too big. The little thing's just not burning up enough wax. Option two, replace the wick in the previous candle. Now, we made a whole video about this. You can watch that here. But essentially, you just take a wick corer or an apple corer and pull that wick out, put a new wick in, refill with wax, melt it down, and test away. Big caveat, these candles are not being start to finish tested. So when you put a new wick into it, it's really not going to qualify for a full test. But you can use this to kind of iterate quickly through different wicks to see what things are going to look like and just kind of get some quick data points that are a little rough around the edges. And if that new wick, or you do that a couple times and you find a wick that seems to be working, well then start it all the way over. Pour a fresh new candle with the ideal wick in it and test it start to finish. Okay, so that's tunneling. Just change your wick size, wick up, make sure that's nice and safe, passing the standard safety test that we talk about here. Now let's talk about cratering. So cratering looks a lot like tunneling. That candle starts to burn and it burns down real fast, like really quick right at the beginning. It goes down and it looks like a tunnel. But what's actually happening is it's burning through a crater, a little air pocket that's underneath the surface of the candle. Let's kind of diagram this so we can understand it a little bit better. So a crater starts when you actually pour the candle. When you pour the candle, in a normal candle, it'll kind of look like this, right? There will be a flat top where the wick just kind of comes up through. Whoop, there's our wick, comes up through and looks good. But in a cratered tunnel, after you pour, there's all the wax here, but near the top, and I'm going to exaggerate this a little bit, there's a crater. There's an air pocket directly under where that wick is. And so when that wick initially burns, what'll happen is it'll melt this wax right here, and it'll just kind of initially destroy that wax near the top, and it'll create this really small looking cavern. Now, like I said, this is exaggerated, but what you'll see on the top is it'll look like a tunnel. But even though that candle is appropriately sized, it is going to maybe extinguish itself because as it burns down lower and lower, it's not going to get enough oxygen and it's just going to completely wither out and die. And you'll think that the wick is too small because it cratered, but actually it's not. So how do we fix this? Well, when you have a candle that you suspect maybe does that or you witness it doing that, what you can do is apply a heat gun to the entire top of the surface. So melt down roughly, the top quarter-inch, really small amount of wax so that it kind of fills itself in. If we go back to our candle here, it fills itself in, and what you'll see is the candle actually lowers in height a little bit. You kind of have to catch it right at the beginning, otherwise it'll be a little bit too late. And then that wick hopefully doesn't get buried. If it does, then you'll need to just kind of deal with it. It's not a pretty process. It's definitely not elegant. You're not going to look like the world's greatest candle maker when you deal with this problem. But it is important to distinguish the difference between something that is normal, just kind of fills in normal, and something that is cratered, and then something that is tunneled. So let's kind of draw what a tunneled candle would look like. Totally tunneling, you would see that there would be a ledge here. No matter how long you burn that candle, you're going to have a ledge of wax around the outside. So this is just a cross section of the candle, but the wick right here no matter how long you burn it, it's never gonna reach and melt those edges. It's just too small. That wick is not generating enough heat, and that is normal tunneling. At the end of the day, tunneling isn't a big deal. It just means that you need to increase your wick size. But be careful not to confuse it for cratering, because then you might adjust your wick size up when the candle was actually fine all along, and you'll end up dealing with heat and safety issues that you just don't want. So that's all I have for you. I hope some of this was helpful, useful, or insightful. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.